What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel, and today we have episode 27 of the Pittsburgh Steelers franchise here on Madden 21, and we have unfortunate news. If you guys weren't able to watch that game yesterday, we were officially eliminated from the playoffs by the Cleveland Browns, our arch rivals, who managed to take the 1 seed away from us and managed to come into that game with a healthy team. Definitely not making excuses because we played pretty poorly in that game. I made a lot of mistakes, and we just weren't able to come out on top. Though what I will say is it came down to the very last play with time left in regulation. It came down to 0 on the clock as we had an opportunity to throw up a touchdown, and we were unable to come out victorious. With that being said, if you guys did not watch that matchup, if you are a fan of this channel and a fan of this series, you guys need to go and watch that Cleveland Browns matchup, because that is going to be our team to beat for the years to come. And that team is dirty. I mean, that team is really good, and they are built to beat our team. Tex, who is the coach of the Browns, has specifically built a team to defeat our team, and so we're going to have to retool a little bit as we go forward. I'm thinking of a couple of different things, but make sure you guys go check that out. The link to that game is on the community page on my YouTube channel, and after I get this video up and everything, I'm going to go ahead and actually send you guys the video. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into some recap of this season, how our players did, how everybody else's players did, and then we'll take a look at our path forward. First thing I want to look at is the playoff bracket. So as you guys know, we had that rematch game against the Miami Dolphins, 23-20. We came out victorious, and then we ended up going up and playing the 1 seed Browns, coming out with a loss 33-28. If we would have gotten that final touchdown as time expired, we had a chance to win the game right then and there, and we were unable to get it done. We couldn't come down with the ball in the corner of the end zone, and with that being said, the Cleveland Browns advance to face the Chargers, 2 users in the AFC Championship game. So this should be an interesting matchup. I have no idea which way this is going to go, because the Chargers user struggled the first 2 seasons mightily, and has had a far better record this season. Surprisingly, the Titans, who we did lose to this season, one of our only losses, they got knocked out in the wild card round. So that was an unfortunate series of events. I was really looking forward to having 4 users in the AFC divisional round, and it was not to be. But with that being said, the only representation on the NFC side right now is the Panthers. The Vikings, who was the other user that made it to the playoffs on that side of things, he got eliminated pretty badly against the Seahawks, 42-21, but that's not entirely his fault, because a lot of his team was injured. I think he had at least 3 starting offensive linemen injured, probably 2 starting defensive linemen, and he came into there as probably one of the most banged up teams. With that being said, Washington is playing the Carolina Panthers here for the NFC Championship, and that should be an interesting matchup, because Washington, as we said in the first year round, was a surprise playoff contender. They fell off a bit last year, had a down year, and for whatever reason, they're back to the playoffs this year. So I find that to be interesting. They obviously lost this game 30-8, didn't put up much of a fight against the Panthers, but I think it's interesting that they made it here nonetheless. And the Super Bowl is going to be the Panthers versus either the 1 seed Browns or the Chargers, who came in as the 2 seed, I suppose it looks like. So interesting matchup that's going to be happening there. I don't know who's going to stream that game, but if you go watch the stream that I played the Browns, the Browns are probably also the one that are going to stream the Chargers game, so subscribe to his channel. I apologize for the audio in advance, because he doesn't make a lot of videos and his mic isn't a great quality, so there's some echoiness and stuff going on, but nonetheless, you'll get to see a fantastic game at the very least between the Steelers and the Browns there. So that's how things are turning out in terms of the playoff race. With that being said, I do want to say this will be the first time in the franchise that we will have an opportunity to have Pro Bowlers, because of the fact that we've gone to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. Therefore, we did not have any Pro Bowlers. So I'm excited to see what happens with the Pro Bowl. I don't think I'm going to have an opportunity to coach it, because out of the 2 teams, the Browns and the Chargers, Whichever one loses that matchup, I think, gets the opportunity to coach the Pro Bowl. If there is an opportunity to coach the Pro Bowl, though, I would like to bring that to you guys if possible, so you guys can see some different action than what we normally put up on this channel. With all of that being said, let's go ahead and look at our team stats, and then after that we'll go ahead and look at the stats around the league and the award winners. So Trey Lance had a pretty good season. I mean, it's hard to say pretty good. I mean, realistically, he had a fantastic season when you consider 5,200 yards, 46 touchdowns. I threw a ton of passing yards and touchdowns, and I think I said this in many of my games, is I was still in Big Ben Roethlisberger mode most of the season, and I struggled to transition to Trey Lance. And towards the end of the season, I stopped throwing the ball downfield as much and stopped taking as many shots as I was comfortable with taking with Big Ben Roethlisberger, and I had more of a methodical offense, and so my interception numbers tailed off at the end of the season. But up until like week 10, I had like 28 interceptions or something like that, and so that's my fault. And honestly, I shouldn't have had this many passing yards. That's just simply me trying to force the ball downfield too much in an offense that doesn't work that way with Trey Lance. I need to adapt the way that I play on offense, and quite honestly, I might try to work De'Aaron King in, because his speed as a quarterback could be very useful for us. And I also think that I need to try and run the ball a little bit more with Trey Lance and take some of those opportunities. And obviously 30 interceptions in my world is unacceptable, and we're going to be working on that primarily going into next season. But with that being said, I mean, he had a good quarterback rating. 46 touchdowns is nothing to sneeze at. 5,200 yards is kind of obscene. So we did end up with a little bit high in terms of the passing numbers, and we're going to be turning down the quarter length and things next season because of the fact that everybody's been doing so well this year, that we're probably going to try to make it a little bit more difficult on ourselves and make it less likely that we hit these massive marks, especially with low overall players. With that being said, Anthony McFarland, we decided to give the starting role to at the beginning of the season, and he burst out in a big way. He took that role and ran away with it, so we felt no reason to really supplement him a lot with James Conner. I'm not going to say that we didn't work James Conner in, because he did get a lot of the alternate reps, spelling McFarland when McFarland was tired, and on the goal line he obviously got 4 touchdowns. So he had his opportunities, but we weren't giving him a significant role in the offense. Now this is something that next year I might work to increase his role in the offense again, but I really liked what I saw out of Anthony McFarland. I managed to get 1,600 yards out of him, and that's just absolutely phenomenal for a running back that we've been working on developing behind James Conner for 2 seasons. I really like what I see out of McFarland, and he's has a potential to be one of the top backs in the league as we go forward in the next few seasons, and I really like seeing that out of him. He had 13 touchdowns to add to that, so fantastic player there. The only thing that we got to work on quite a bit with Anthony McFarland is his fumble numbers. He has fumbled 4 times, which is too high, and his carrying numbers just really aren't that great. He's not going to be able to hang on to the ball, especially against some of the really good linebackers in the league with a base of 84 carrying. So, especially going up against the Browns, that's when we fumble, and we can't afford to fumble against the Browns because that's who we're going to be competing with. The other thing to note is that Trey Lance had 4 fumbles himself, and this was an issue that we saw at the end of the season. I don't know what changed. I don't know if it was an update in the game or what happened, but Trey Lance lost the ball 4 times, and it seemed like towards the end of the season there, basically anytime he was touched, whenever he was getting sacked, the ball just immediately shot out of his hand. It was like it was just, you touch Trey Lance and it's an automatic fumble. So I don't know what's going on there, but we're going to have to do some investigation and do what we can to prevent this man from fumbling, because those turnovers killed us, especially when our defense doesn't force a lot of fumbles. And quite honestly, our interception numbers dipped this season as well. We led the league in sacks, but we were pretty low on the interception and the fumble totals. From a receiving standpoint, Baylor Cupp as a rookie had an insane season. I mean, this man caught the ball anytime that we threw it to him, and I can't see that it changing anytime soon. I mean, this guy had a Travis Kelce-like year here, and Baylor Cupp might be our receptions leader and receiving yards leader for the foreseeable future. I mean, he's such a reliable target, and he's a very good combat catch target. I see no reason not to continue to give him the ball, and you guys have probably seen that if you've watched the games this season. Chase Claypool, towards the end of the season, managed to pick up his game, come out with 1,078 yards and 4 touchdowns. I'd like to see more touchdowns out of him, but I think one of the things that you guys will notice with our offense, in the past, Juju Smith-Schuster has been our main touchdown target, and then our tight end, Eric Ebron, was pretty much second to Juju Smith-Schuster. This season, we've adjusted it in a way that we've really spread the ball around. I mean, you look at Baylor Cupp had 13, Chase Claypool had 4, and Juju had 7, as well as Rondale Moore with 8, McFarland 5, Gentry 5, Albert O had 4. So we spread the ball around more. And like I said, we did have a crazy passing yardage total, but we're going to be working on that as we move forward, trying to make the league settings slightly more difficult for us, especially against the CPU. But Anthony McFarland added 430 yards in addition. I thought Zach Gentry might have a bigger role in this offense, but it turned out that he just didn't. In comparison to guys like Baylor Cupp, Baylor Cupp just simply took over that role. And so we are going to be parting ways with Zach Gentry here in the offseason. He is still young. He is still 26 years old, so no reason for us to necessarily part ways with him other than the fact that I just don't want to sign him to a big contract when Baylor Cupp is clearly the guy, and then Albert O will be a decent backup to him. We might as well draft one as well, draft a tight end to add to that position, or sign somebody in free agency to a decent backup contract. The offensive line, there's not much to speak about here. 4 sacks given up by Chukwuma is the most, and that's really not that high of a sack total. I mean, Chukwuma was facing some of the top pass rushers in the league, especially considering Myles Garrett. I will say that we have had some injuries across our offensive line, though, so that is absolutely worth noting. DeCastro only played 13 games, Okorafor 14, and our starting center, Ben Jones, that we brought in for the year, only played 13 games, so I think that is absolutely worth noting. In addition to that, on the defensive side of the ball, I think that there are some very good ratings or stats or whatever you want to call it here to highlight. I'm going to check real quick. Yeah, okay. I don't know. I need to stop checking to make sure that I have volume on these videos. I just assume for some reason that it's glitching out. I get nervous about it. But Devin Bush had 138 tackles, 16 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 interceptions. Devin Bush is a monster in the middle of the field. Unfortunately, he didn't show up against the Browns, so that one hurt us a little bit. Ulysses Gilbert is matching him pretty much stride for stride, as I've been saying since day one. 136 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, and 4 interceptions. So we have a fantastic duo at middle linebacker, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Minkah Fitzpatrick had a pretty good year with 103 tackles, although what I will say is that I don't like to see the fact that my safety had that many tackles. That means we gave up a little too much yardage, in my opinion. He did have 4 interceptions, though. To add to that, Justin Lane had 84 tackles. Terrell Edmonds had 80, and then TJ Carter, the other corner, had 69. The other things of note, I guess we could take a look at some of the tackles for loss. Cameron Hayward had a few, or I shouldn't say a few, a lot. Tuitt had a lot, and TJ Watt had double digits. And then in the sack totals, we had a really good season from TJ Watt and Daniil Hunter, so great edge rushers there. Cam Hayward had 10.5, Tuitt had 8.5. Alex Highsmith actually managed to add 8.5, and this guy got himself up to superstar during the year, so I think that one's worth noting. And then we added those sacks by the defensive backs and the linebackers, and then a couple here and there by some of the backups. We did have the most sacks out of anybody in the league. From an interception perspective, Steven Nelson led the team with 5. We already mentioned Gilbert and Patrick and Devin Bush. Terrell Edmonds had 3. TJ Carter had 3, and then we had a couple other added from Justin Lane and Isaiah Oliver. The thing that is worth noting is that, like I said, we didn't force very many fumbles. We had 2, 4, 6, 7. So not a lot. And honestly, a lot of those ones that we did force, obviously TJ Watt, Daniil Hunter, Alex Highsmith, those are coming off of sacks. So that's worth noting. And we did have a couple of defensive touchdowns that I think are worth noting with Terrell Edmonds, Highsmith, Gilbert, and Minkah Fitzpatrick. So that's how things turned out defensively for us. I do want to note the kicker had a very good season. He made 25 out of 26 kicks, and he made 66 out of 67 extra points. He had a very good season, and he did win Kicker of the Year, and he did make some long field goals. He was 3 of 3 from 50 plus, so that is absolutely worth noting there. And then there was not much else worth noting outside of Rondale Moore being a pretty effective punt and kick returner, but we might be looking looking to transition him away from that role if we can find somebody else to take over at that spot. With that being said, let's go ahead and look at the yearly awards, and then I'll tell you guys why some of these players won their yearly awards. So the NFL MVP is actually Aaron Rodgers, who beat out the rookie Jaden Samuels on the Panthers and Christian McCaffrey, which was a bit of a surprise that Jaden Daniels ended up being that high, but I'll show you guys why in a minute. Sam Ehlinger made his way up this list, and then Trey Lance came in at 5. There was also Patty Mahomes, Dwayne Haskins, who had a very good year, Baker Mayfield, who's on the Patriots, who had a very good year, Russell Wilson, and then Nick Chubb. Coach of the year went to the Panthers coach because he went 15-1. No surprises there. And then on the AFC side here, Patrick Mahomes won Offensive Player of the Year, and we did have Anthony McFarland in there as a candidate, as well as Trey Lance. Defensive Player of the Year went to Joey Bosa, who had very close to the sack record, I think it was. He had like 20 sacks or something, and Devin Bush came in at a close second, with Ulysses Gilbert also being mentioned on the list. Offensive Rookie of the Year, we actually did not win with Baylor Cupp, which was a bit of a surprise to us, but Kidon Slovis, who was drafted to the Chargers, who are in the playoffs at this point, really picked up his play, and he threw a ton of touchdowns, so, not a lot of surprise that a quarterback is going to earn that award over a tight end, but I was really pulling for Baylor Cupp to get that award, so that one's a little bit unfortunate for us. Nobody else to mention there. Defensive Rookie of the Year, I don't even think we have a player on this list. The best quarterback did go to Trey Lance in the AFC, who beat out Sam Ehlinger, which is weird because, I don't understand how he ends up ahead of Sam Ehlinger here in this list, but he wasn't ahead of him in the MVP list. So not quite sure how exactly that works out, but I'll take that all day long for Trey Lance. The best running back, McFarland, finished second. The best wide receiver, I think that we had guys on this list, but not high. Yeah, Juju ended up finishing here at 10th. The best O-line, David DeCastro, is on here, as well as Takuma Okorafor, who played really well. Best defensive lineman, I'm sure that we have Daniil Hunter, Cam Hayward on there, and then best linebacker, I'm pretty sure that we would also have Devin Bush, Ulysses Gilbert, TJ Watt. No surprises because our defense is the best part of this team. I don't think we have anybody from the quarterback perspective or defensive back perspective, so that's unfortunate. None of our defensive backs played well enough. And actually, something I do want to mention is defensive backs wise, I feel like our team is kind of lacking. Although our defense was very, very good this year, I think one of our major places to potentially upgrade in the offseason is going to be our defensive backs. As I can show you guys, our kicker won Kicker of the Year, and then that's pretty much what there is in terms of the awards. I guess I can scroll through the NFC for you guys real quick so you guys can see those. Aaron Rodgers, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Harrison Smith, who is still hanging around, and on the Panthers, he's basically playing a sub-linebacker type of role with the Panthers at this point. Jaden Daniels, the quarterback, obviously won Offensive Rookie of the Year. Monte Morton, who has a ton of interceptions and huge plays for the Vikings. It's really unfortunate that the Vikings got eliminated in the wild card round of the playoffs, because I really wanted to see them match up against the Panthers later on, because the Vikings have some great young players on this defense, and Monte Morton is chief among them. Best quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. Best running back, CMC. Best wide receiver, Curtis Samuel. A lot of these awards basically split between the Packers and the Panthers, because they were the top two teams in the NFC. David Bakhtiari, best O-line. Vita Vea, best D-line. Had a very, very good year. Shaquille Barrett had another good year. Harrison Smith obviously coming in as the best DB, and then Jason Sanders at kicker. So that's where we stand in terms of awards, but I want to show you guys why some of those players earned those awards. So from a passing perspective, Baker Mayfield actually ended up at the top of the league in passing yards, which was a bit of a surprise for us, but Aaron Rodgers had an insane season when you consider how many touchdowns to interceptions he threw. So he not only threw 5,200 yards, but he threw 51 touchdowns to 13 interceptions, and that's why he's so high on this list. With that being said, Jaden Daniels threw 5,000 yards, 52 touchdowns, and 32 interceptions. So Trey Lance was right there with Jaden Daniels, the rookie that was above him on the MVP list. Personally speaking, I think it would make more sense for Trey Lance to be above him, but from a quarterback rating perspective, Jaden Daniels was better, and Aaron Rodgers was clearly the best out of any of those players. So Aaron Rodgers obviously won that MVP award. From a rushing perspective, it's no surprise this guy just uses the heck out of Christian McCaffrey, and 2,000 yards is not unexpected, all things considered, but Anthony McFarland came in second place, guys, with 1,600 yards because we used him so much. Receiving-wise, Curtis Samuels, A.J. Brown, James Washington, some surprise performers here, and guys like James Washington who did so well. And the Chargers acquired John Ross in free agency a couple years ago, or last season or something like that, and he didn't do very well with him. He didn't do much, and he was honestly looking to trade him mid-season, and then all of a sudden he came onto the scene. So John Ross, kind of a surprise to bump up that list, and then Baylor Cupp coming in on that list pretty strong. From a defensive perspective, I do have to say Devin Bush won this handedly last year in terms of the tackle lead, but both Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds kind of took over at that role. Tremaine Edmonds led the league in tackles by a wide margin there, I would say. But I would still say Devin Bush is the better linebacker considering all of the added bonuses that Devin Bush had with the 16 tackles for loss, 4 sacks added. They did tie an interception, so that's worth noted, but things like that are definitely worth noting. And then this is why Johnny Giovino got kicker of the year, because he just had such a good kicking percentage and he made a lot of long field goals. I think he actually had the most field goals made out of anybody. So with that being said, that's kind of the recap of where we've been in this season. And like I said, playoffs are essentially down to 3 teams, with the Panthers advancing and then the Chargers and the Browns advancing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Make sure you guys go onto the community channel and go check out the Browns channel where we played each other. Definitely check out that game if you have not already, and hopefully tonight, I think it is, they're going to be playing this game, the Chargers versus the Browns, the AFC Championship game. That should be happening sometime between 11 and 12, so stay tuned for that. But definitely go check out that game that we played against the Pittsburgh Steelers, against the Browns, because that was a huge game. With that being said, the last thing that I wanted to do in this video was I wanted to take a look at our team and kind of mention some of the areas that need improvement and kind of our path forward, because there's some things that I feel like we need to do on this team. Number one, and I think chief among them, is I think we need to add to our offensive line one way or another. I like Chukwuma Okorafor at left tackle. I have no problems keeping him there. Jarrett Patterson is a fantastic left guard, and I have no issues there. Obviously, DeCastro at right guard's fantastic, but he's up there in age, so honestly, he could retire at any time if he chose to, being that he is 33 years old. So we need to invest heavily in the offensive line. Don't get me wrong. I like Seth Brown as a young offensive lineman. He's big. He's bulky. He has the ability to be a decent lineman, but he's already 26 years old. We drafted him at 24, and there's not a lot more room for him to grow. And he got beat quite a few times against the Browns. He just doesn't hold up as good as I expected him to in pass coverage. So we are looking to upgrade that position, and we're probably looking to upgrade the center position as well, because we only gave Ben Jones a 1-year deal. He's obviously going to fall off, being that he's 34 years old now. So we have at least the center position and the right tackle position to worry about, on top of potentially the right guard position if something were to happen with David DeCastro. I think that the tight end position is pretty locked up. I did mention that we are going to be moving on from Zach Gentry just because I don't want to pay him whenever his role dipped in the offense, because Baylor Cupp is so good. I am comfortable with Albert O as the backup to Baylor Cupp, but I do think I want to draft or sign another depth tight end in the offseason. Our wide receivers are solid, and I plan to make no moves at wide receiver. Halfback wise, I'm still okay with Anthony McFarland and James Conner. I see no issues with the duo that we have here, and Anthony McFarland should end up with Superstar after the awards are officially handed out with all the XP and everything at the end of the season. So he should end up being a superstar and get us some traits, and that should help us out. Trey Lance is going to be the guy at quarterback, and I really liked what we saw out of De'Aaron King in the playing time that he got in Week 17, and I brought him in for a run in the Browns game, and he picked up like 20 yards before, I mistakenly, incorrectly, I don't know what you want to call it, hit the slide button, but I didn't hit the slide button, so he gave up a fumble. But I do want to try to work him into the offense. Our fullback, we're letting Derek Watt walk because he is up to 30 years old now, I believe. So we're going to hang on to Jalen Samuels, I think, and play him at fullback. But the defensive side of the ball is something that I think needs addressing. Obviously, our defensive line is very good, and we brought in depth defensive line. I don't have much issue with what's going on with our defensive line outside of the fact that Cam Hayward's getting old, so we have to note the fact that Cam Hayward is 34 and could retire or something like that. Stephon Tuitt is now 30 years old, and he'll start to regress pretty significantly, I would imagine. So we need to consider bringing in a top defensive lineman in the draft to develop behind these guys, because, you know, we just don't have that at the moment, and I would like to have somebody ready once one of these guys leaves or multiple of these guys leave. We are solid at the middle linebacker spot. I have no issues with Devin Bush and Ulysses Gilbert. We are solid at outside linebacker with TJ Watt. And I don't really know how to feel with Alex Highsmith, because he did turn 26. He is an 81, and he did earn Superstar this year, so that puts him in a little bit of a weird role. He's a good player all around, I would say. I mean, he's got a little bit of everything, but he's not particularly great at one thing or another. So I don't know how to feel about him necessarily, so that is somebody that I'm potentially going to be making a decision on. I think Minkah continues to play fantastic. We're obviously not going to make a change there. But Terrell Edmunds was somebody that I think underperformed a little bit, in my opinion, in that playoff game against the Browns, and is maybe worth review. But outside of that, I think that our next biggest position that is worth upgrading outside of the offensive line is our cornerback spot. From a cornerback aspect, yeah, I like Steven Nelson. I like keeping him around, but at this point he is now 30 years old, and I would expect him to start to dip in terms of his abilities. And let's just face it, Justin Lane and TJ Carter were fine as corners. That was who I started at corner this year, but they're really not getting the job done as well as I would have liked them to. You know, Justin Lane did get some speed upgrades and things during the year, and he's decent, but he just simply doesn't make plays consistently, and I would really like to get a better corner to pair with Steven Nelson. TJ Carter, I think, still has quite a bit of room to grow, because he is only 24 years old. So I think he might have a little bit more of a long-term role in this defense, but honestly, I think I would rather bump Justin Lane back to the slot position. And maybe I should put TJ Carter on the outside. I don't know exactly what I should do, but I do want to point out to you guys that that is an area of concern for this team. We did pick up Isaiah Oliver in free agency last year, but he's not a lot to look at, and I think he probably figures out more as like a free safety in this defense than anything. He does rotate in there. But I am looking heavily to make changes at the cornerback spot and the D-line spot, get guys ready for the future, as well as the offensive line, because I just think we aren't getting it done at those positions, and that's what we're looking to upgrade. Let me know what you guys think of the team. If you guys watched that Browns game, let me know what you guys think. I do have to apologize for the fact that I was complaining the entire game. All respect to Tex, because he simply built a team that is designed to beat my team. And, ultimately it falls on me to be able to beat him. It falls on me to be able to control the Pittsburgh Steelers to win, and I was unable to do that, and that's on me. I'm not putting any blame on anybody else. That's how the season ended up for us, and we're going to try to come back out next year and be competitive and hopefully reach another Super Bowl, but we'll see. Make sure you guys stay tuned. Make sure you guys leave a like on the video if you guys enjoy this series. Make sure you guys comment down below as well, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you guys have a good night.